the millionaire CEO's daughter. The autumn leaves drifted slowly across the marble steps of the Harrison estate, their golden colors catching the late afternoon sunlight. Inside the grand mansion, 24-year-old Emma Harrison sat by her bedroom window, watching the world outside with a mixture of longing and resignation. Emma had not walked in 3 years. The car accident that claimed her mother's life had left her paralyzed from the waist down, confined to a wheelchair that felt more like a prison with each passing day. Her father, billionaire CEO Richard Harrison, had spared no expense in seeking treatment. The world's best doctors, revolutionary therapies, experimental procedures, nothing had worked. Miss Emma, called Margaret, the elderly housekeeper who had become more like a grandmother to her, "Your father would like to see you in the garden." Emma wheeled herself through the familiar halls, past oil paintings worth more than most people's houses, past marble sculptures that seemed to mock her stillness with their frozen grace. The mansion felt enormous and empty, despite housing dozens of staff members. In the garden, her father paced back and forth on his phone, as he always did. Even in moments meant for family, Richard Harrison was consumed by business deals and board meetings. When he saw Emma approaching, he ended his call with a sharp goodbye. "Emma, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying that practiced warmth he used in negotiations. "I've arranged for another specialist to visit next week, Dr. Mueller from Switzerland. His techniques are ... no more doctors, Dad." Emma's voice was quiet but firm. "Please." Richard's face tightened. He was not a man accustomed to hearing no. "Emma, you can't give up. Your mother would have wanted ... Mom would have wanted me to live." Emma interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "Not just exist while waiting for a miracle that isn't coming." The conversation ended there, as most of their conversations did, with uncomfortable silence and her father retreating to his office. Emma wheeled herself to her favorite spot in the garden, a secluded area near the old oak tree, where she could be alone with her thoughts. She didn't notice the man working in the flower beds until he spoke. "Those roses are struggling," came a gentle voice with a slight southern accent. Emma turned to see a man in his early 30s, wearing simple work clothes and gardening gloves. His dark hair was tousled from the breeze, and his kind eyes held a warmth she rarely encountered in her father's business world. "This must be the new groundskeeper Margaret had mentioned." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your work," Emma said, suddenly "You're not interrupting anything important," the man replied with a smile. "I'm Jake, by the way, Jake Miller. I just started working here last week." "Emma," she replied, then added unnecessarily, "I live here." Jake chuckled softly. "I figured as much. This is quite a place you have here." There was no judgment in his voice, no awe or calculation, just simple observation. Emma found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. "The roses," Jake continued, kneeling beside the flower bed, "they're getting too much fertilizer. Sometimes when people care too much, they end up doing more harm than good." Emma wondered if he was talking about more than just flowers. Over the following weeks, Emma found herself spending more time in the garden. Jake had a way of working quietly, never making her feel like she was in the way or that her wheelchair was an obstacle to navigate around. He would share stories about growing up on his family's small farm in Tennessee, about plants and seasons, about finding beauty in simple things. "My grandmother always said that healing doesn't come from forcing something to grow," Jake told her one afternoon as they watched the newly pruned roses beginning to bloom. "It comes from creating the right conditions and then being patient." "And what if it never grows?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake was quiet for a moment, his hand still in the soil. "Then you find a different kind of beauty, but you never stop believing in possibilities." Emma felt something shift inside her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced since before the accident. Hope was dangerous. She had learned that the hard way, but something about Jake's quiet confidence made her want to believe again. One evening, as the first frost threatened the last of the autumn flowers, Emma found Jake preparing to cover the delicate plants. "Let me help," she said, reaching for a protective cloth. "Emma," Jake said softly, "can I ask you something?" She nodded, bracing herself for questions about her condition, her accident, her famous family. Instead, Jake asked, "When was the last time you tried to feel your legs?" The question caught her off guard. "The doctors said the damage was permanent. The nerve pathways are ... "I know what the doctors said," Jake interrupted gently. "But when was the last time you tried to listen to your body instead of their words?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I can't go through hoping again, Jake. I can't survive another disappointment." Jake knelt beside her wheelchair, his eyes level with hers. "What if it's not about walking? What if it's just about feeling alive again?" The next morning, Emma woke before dawn. Something had pulled her from sleep, not a sound, but a sensation she couldn't quite identify. She sat up in bed, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Slowly, carefully, she placed her hands on her legs. For the first time in 3 years, she tried to truly feel instead of just remember. At first there was nothing but the familiar numbness, but then, like the faintest whisper, she felt something. It wasn't pain or pressure, it was warmth. A tingling sensation so subtle she almost dismissed it as imagination. But it was there. Over the following days, the sensations grew stronger. Emma said nothing to her father or the medical staff, afraid that speaking about it might make it disappear. But she shared everything with Jake during their quiet moments in the garden. "The body remembers," Jake told her as they worked together to plant spring bulbs for next year. "Sometimes it just needs permission to remember." 3 months later, on a crisp December morning, Emma felt her toe move, just slightly, just barely. But undeniably, she was alone in her room when it happened, and she spent the next hour alternating between laughter and tears when she finally told her father. He immediately called his team of specialists. The tests confirmed what Emma already knew somehow. Impossibly, feeling was returning to her legs. The doctors had no explanation for her recovery, calling it unprecedented and medically inexplicable. But Emma understood. Healing had come not from expensive treatments or miraculous procedures, but from learning to believe in herself again. It had come from patient care, gentle encouragement, and the quiet wisdom of a man who understood that sometimes the most powerful medicine was simply hope. As spring arrived and the carefully tended roses burst into magnificent bloom, Emma took her first tentative steps in 3 years. Jake was there beside her, not supporting her physically, but offering the steady presence that had made all the difference. "Thank you," she whispered as she managed 3 steps before needing to rest. "You did this yourself," Jake replied, his smile brighter than the morning sun. "I just helped you remember how to listen." In the garden where it all began, surrounded by the flowers they had nurtured together, Emma realized that sometimes the greatest healers are not the ones with the most degrees or expensive equipment, but those who understand that healing begins in the heart.